Dearly redheaded, we are choosing consciousness today to get through this thing called grief. Interesting word, grief. It means love, which makes for a mighty good joke, but I'm here to tell you, there's nothing else. Just joy. And if the big picture tends to bring you down, go crazy once your life goes. Woo!
Good morning, all. I'm here with my childhood friend, Pam Dors. Pam and I were summer friends, I'd say. And then when it came to 5th and 6th grade, me being in 5th, her being in 6th, we were around one another for a full school year, which was kind of neat. Pam, speak to where you're from and how you got to East Marion, Long Island.
Well, good morning. How I got to East Marion, Long Island. Well, I was born in a suburb of New York City. My family had a summer home out in that teeny tiny little town of East Marion, which is the end of the islands. And just prior to entering 6th grade, we moved out there. We sold our house in the suburbs and moved out to the best little beach town ever. And there I was. I've been going out there since before I was born. I've been spending summers out there. So it was a very familiar, quaint little town.
And who'd you move out there with?
My family moved out. It was my father and my mother and myself. I have a brother, but he had already entered the Coast Guard, so he did not move with us because he was already stationed away, but he'd come back and visit at times. Gotcha.
Part of the reason I wanted to talk to you, and Pam and I spoke the other day, was all that you've been through. And I'd like it to come from you, and then I'll add something if it applies, but I'd really like you to talk about how you first realized that what kind of predicament you were in with your mom and dad.
Yeah, so I've been on one hell of a ride. There's a lot to unpack. There's a lot of layers to my onion. And I spent all of my years that I can remember with an incredibly abusive, alcoholic parent. My mother was a raging alcoholic who would drink and become very angry, very physically and emotionally abusive. And my father spent all of his time trying to corral her rather than protect me. So when I went off to college, it was a beautiful break from having to deal with the daily chaos that was my life. However, going off to college brought back a lot more than I really anticipated it doing. I was in a very small all-women's college, and we had very close proximity to a all-male college, and so us girls would go visit the fraternities on a regular basis. As a senior in school, we were all given little sisters, as they were called. And after a fraternity party, my little sister came to me and told me that she had been raped, and she was pretty distraught and hysterical. Brought her to the hospital. Fast forward to me getting her to the school counselor, she wanting me to hold her hand and just be there as emotional support. As I heard her story, it brought flashbacks of something that I had no idea had actually happened in my own life. So I had very quickly found out that my brain had shut down and protected me from sexual abuse from my own brother when I was a child. And to say it was terrifying at best, and brought me to an emotional place that I was really not ready to handle at the worst, was an understatement. And from that point forward, each time there was some sort of trauma that I was around, I began remembering things that had happened in my own past that for a very long time, obviously, my brain sort of coddled me and protected me from all of those things.
Right.
And there's so many. I mean, I don't even know where to start.
Well, what comes out of this is what should come out of it. I don't really have an agenda. I would like you to speak to, if you're comfortable, what you shared about your mother's background.
Yeah. So at some point, people always discuss family history, and at some point, I had learned that my mother's mother committed suicide when I was 6 weeks old. So I was what my mother used to call a replacement child. I had a sister who had died of Southern infant death syndrome, I believe 3 years prior to when I was born. And evidently my grandmother was a very happy, according to my mom, a very happy, well-adjusted woman. When my sister died, she started to fall off. And then when I was born, because I wasn't my sister, supposedly she committed suicide due to that fact. Mm. So obviously, or maybe not obviously, I'm not sure, there's clearly some sort of mental instability within the family. But from what I understand from my dad, my mom had started drinking long before that. It had always been part of her life. And she'd never spoke ill of her parents. She was an only child. I don't know if there was some sort of physical, mental, or sexual abuse for her, which is what was the catalyst for her drinking, or if it was just who she was, or I don't even know. But I feel like that sort of helped set the stage for how she ended up treating me going forward.
Right.
Yeah.
And from what I recollect, you remember your father's upbringing, no real red flaggy things. So your father's rage more or less came out of corralling your mother.
It appears such, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, because
go
ahead.
Well, I was going to say the only thing that to me was a bit flaggy about my dad was the thoughts that were embedded in his mind as he grew up. So his father was very much a anti-Semitic racist. Even though my father's mom was Jewish, my father truly believed and made statements throughout my entire childhood about how awesome Hitler was. And it was I didn't even know that my family was Jewish until I actually went on ancestry.com and found out, and it was a horrific experience. So I don't know if I guess mentally that's not a red flag, but to have been brought up with that as well as everything else, I feel like is just a whole nother layer.
No, it is, Pam. It is. Absolutely is.
Yeah.
I remember, and this is the only interjection that I wanted to make. I remember your father raging at me at your house in the 5th grade. And what I took away from it, because I had dissociated from rage abuse, was I wonder how he knew I wouldn't tell. And that is what has led me back to you over the years, because I know, between knowing a little bit about your family, having known your brother, pretty, I don't want to say easy to see, but I knew that you had been through a lot. So a lot of the reason for us staying in contact has been because, not similar experience, but wanting to talk about this with somebody that, we're comfortable enough with one another that we can get to the hard stuff and help others who have dissociated from childhood trauma start to put the pieces together. So now I'm wondering if you want to say anything more about, or if you want to go right to what you did about having the memories come back in college. So what did that lead you to do?
So after I graduated, I ended up befriending a wonderful therapist who became a very dear friend, and she did some wonderful, I guess they call it talk therapy now. But we spent a long time talking about what I was remembering and how it was affecting me and my personality and my just being. So she encouraged me to talk to my parents, tell them about the sexual abuse that I had remembered from my brother. And in doing so, it really created a shitstorm. The very first thing my parents did is they wanted her phone number. Talk about rage. I can remember my dad screaming and losing his collective shit over the fact of how can somebody plant such horrific thoughts, and that's awful and that can't be, and we're going to sue her. My family was a very litigious, or threatening to be litigious family. So they instantly wanted her phone number. They wanted to know who she was. And of course, I wasn't giving that up because I have this very big loyalty gene that lives within me and wanting to protect others. So I didn't give it up. And my parents they didn't care. They figured out who she was. They threatened a lawsuit. She wouldn't back down. We remained friends. I remained seeing her as a therapist. But it just kept bringing more and more memories out. So eventually my parents said, well, maybe there's something to this. Let's have a meeting with your brother. Your husband's not allowed. His wife is not allowed. Just the four of us are going to have a conversation. And interestingly enough, they rented a hotel room because they wanted it to be on neutral ground, which to say was incredibly uncomfortable is an understatement. Because there I was having to sit on a hotel room on a hotel bed next to my brother, having a conversation about what he did to me. And the whole conversation started with, oh my God, how do we fix this? My brother with his tears, I'll go back to the house and bang on the door for the current owners because I have no memory of this. Surely this didn't happen. We're going to get to the end of this. By the end of the conversation, Pam was a fucking liar. You crazy bitch. How can you say these things? Don't you ever speak to my wife about this? And it was like a switch was flipped. And from that point on, the relationship with my family just disintegrated. I mean, it got pulverized that day. But I kept going back, trying to fix things and figure out how it could work out because I thought that's what you were supposed to do. Nobody actually told me up till that point that it was okay for me to walk away and just end the abuse.
Yeah. Yep. It's not how we're indoctrinated.
No. And especially when it's, my mother, right. She was definitely the ringleader. If there was to be some trauma and some wicked words, it always started with her crafty little tongue. She was a viper, and while you witnessed my father's yelling and rage, thankfully you hadn't been, that we're aware of at least, of her little silver tongue.
No.
Yeah. And it's funny because she was very good about that. A lot of people would look at me, including my husband, for 30 years of, I believe that these things happen to you, but how can it be this wonderful, kind woman? And I'm like, y'all have no idea.
Well, I think,
no idea.
If I may interject, I think it's because in that household, your dad ruled the roost or apparently wanted the outside to think so. I mean, it makes sense to me now that, he looked like the one with the issues from the outside looking in.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. You said something that, so you were already married when this hotel event happened. Had you had your children yet?
I had not had my children yet.
Okay. Because that's very interesting. The entree of the children, but let's step back and talk about wonderful Rick, please. I just want you to talk about how you met Rick and
Yeah. So my husband we've been married for 35 years. We met through very interesting circumstances. We had a common friend that used to live in the city, in by the city with me, moved out, and befriended Rick. Then I moved out to Long Island, to the end of Long Island. I did not meet Rick until after we graduated high school. We sort of met each other. Interestingly enough, I was engaged to somebody else. And now I realize it was more of an engagement to get me the hell out of there after college, because the thought of going back or staying in town or in my house was horrific. So I was engaged to somebody else. Rick and I met. It was literally love at first sight, firebolt, fireworks. Like the moment I laid eyes on him, it was a physical feeling of, there's my soulmate. Wow. So this is what it's like when they talk about it in the movies. But we just sort of grazed lives. We didn't really do much about it. I went off to college. During college, I was home visiting, and I got into a pretty horrific car accident. And I was released from the hospital accidentally. They thought I was, because I was on my period, they thought all of my pain was because I was menstruating, so said the ER doc. Well, 3 or 4 days later of laying in bed, writhing in pain at home, I ended up looking like I was 6 months pregnant, because come to find out, the seatbelt lacerated my spleen and put a substantial hole in it, and the spleen filters all of your blood. So I was bleeding out into my abdominal cavity. And at some point, I have no idea when, at some point before I was put on the ambulance to be taken back to the hospital, I called Rick. I don't know. I mean, he says the phone rang and it was me saying, I'm going to die and I need to see you. And that was that. No, even now, up to this day, I have no idea how I did it. I don't know how I would have remembered his phone number. Remember, we just kind of grazed lives. We didn't spend any time together. But he came to the hospital in the middle of the night. Back in the day, you know, you had to sneak in if you weren't over 18 and weren't related, because I was in ICU. But he snuck in with an ambulance. He came in and he did not leave my bed until I was released. But of course, in the meantime, my fiance's mother showed up, because my fiance was in Florida. And my fiance's mother showed up with a dozen roses, and there was Rick sitting at my bedside table. And actually, at that same moment, my mother came marching in. She had gone through my things. She found my engagement ring. She did not know that I was engaged, because, of course, it was my ticket away. So there we were in a hospital room with me hooked up to every machine, and my mother losing her shit, screaming that I was a whore because I was engaged. That she found birth control pills in my purse as well, and condoms. So automatically I was this wicked, wicked devil child who was having sex, who was engaged, and there was another man at my bedside, which of course, you know, made me whatever. So there I was in quite the pickle. My soon-to-be mother-in-law clearly just dropped the roses and walked out the door, because she did not appreciate my mother. Going back in time a little bit, I used to call my fiance's parents, because I'd climb out my window in my home, and I needed a place to go where I felt safe. And so I would go spend lots of nights at their house on the couch. But they treated me more like a daughter than anybody else did, actually. So for her to have to listen to that rage rather than intervene and protect, she just dropped and ran, which is pretty much what everybody in my life did up until about 5 years ago. There really wasn't anybody that was interested in trying to be the shield for me. I had to be my own shield and sword as a kid. So,
I love your
yeah.
analogies. I just want to write that down. Shield and sword. Okay, so you opened a couple windows there, but I want to talk about. So you and I know you mentioned that you and your former fiance stayed friends till relatively recently when you learned that he no longer could be friends with you because he always sort of held a torch.
Yep. Yeah. And it was really sad for me, actually. And I don't know if it was because for several years he was my safety net,
Right.
and his family I knew would protect me. And now he was out of my life after, all these 40 some years. He now was like, I can't, I'm done.
Okay, you also alluded, and I want to make note of it but not talk about it yet, that it's only been about 5 years since you've really even gotten Rick totally on board with all that's happened. And I want to go there, but I want to do a time check. All right,
Okay.
we're at 20 minutes. So before the next episode, we'll lead with that, and then we'll lead with the kids and the where just so your brain knows. I want to go to the point where you have your children, and you're still trying to please your parents. You gave your eldest son your maiden name as his middle name. May I say it?
Yeah, of course.
Martin. He's Marty in the family. So
Yeah.
even though, and I tried to distinguish for the audience, you did not have your children yet when you had that hotel room experience, your instinct still once you had children was for them to have a little something to do with your parents and your brother, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll go there in the next episode, but back to Rick. So inadvertently, and I'm only saying this now because I'm thinking of it, so Rick saw the person that had been abused, but also the person that desperately wanted a little something with their family.
Yep.
Okay, that's really important because it's in the cycle of abuse. People sometimes don't understand why this stuff perpetuates through the generations, and that's a big part of it. You didn't wake up from dissociation until you were in college, and then even after waking up, there was a number of years, basically until, like you said, 5 years ago. So that was quick numbers, 25 years at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's a big part of what I want to show people, how intricate this is and how involved it is and how hard. Thank you for listening and supporting Natural Born Redhead. If you follow the bouncing balls, please like and subscribe. If you know someone interested in sparing others grief and inciting joy, message me on Facebook or reach out via my website, Natural Born Redhead. J Ma.